I'm doing an experiment. My first Facebook Live while painting. I thought it'd be fun to combine modalities. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, while I paint, just kind of see what it's like multitasking. I'm going to talk a little bit about owning your darkness and what that means. This was inspired by a conversation I was having with some awesome friends today at a coffee plantation here in Bali. And we're talking about kind of the difference between owning your darkness internally, owning your darkness externally, what it means, and how to do it. So, one of the things about owning our darkness is it's essentially a thing that people can potentially use against us to make us feel bad, to make us feel like we are crazy, to gaslight us, to mark us as untrustworthy. Oh, you've had that urge, therefore you're untrustworthy. Oh, you've had that thought, therefore you're untrustworthy. I've never had that thought, therefore I'm more trustworthy than you are. Right? There are all these games that the mind plays. It makes meaning out of random, bullshit that pops into our heads. There is no meaning to it other than it is derived from tension in the body. It is derived from chronic trauma. That's the meaning. So for example, you could have a thought like, I should just kill that bitch, And then you could think, the next thought could be like, oh my God, did I really just think that? I'm so ashamed, right? And so, if we were able to actually own the idea of the thought instead of rejecting it. Hi, Dana. I can't really see the comments, so I have to stand up. If we're actually able to own the idea of the thought instead of rejecting it, then we can actually see the power that lies within it, and we're not rejecting our own power. It's so simple. So let's take another example. I just want to really make this clear so that there's absolutely no question what this looks like and how you can apply it in your day-to-day practice. And I don't see this as a discipline, because I'm not a big fan of discipline per se. I see this as a transmutation opportunity when it feels right, and if it's done well, it should always feel right, because this is empowering. It's like if you're playing Super Mario Brothers and you see like some coins and they're right in your path, why not pick them up? Like, avoiding them is not going to benefit you. So these are some coins I'm providing. You can just pick them up in your path on the way. You don't have to go out of your way. It's not like hard to do. It's just an opportunity to pick up the coins. So, let's say, okay, I'm going to think of probably, best is for me to give you an example from my own life of when I might be judging my own thought or judging my own experience. I might think something like, oh, that person is really trapped in illusion, right? Like, I'm thinking to myself, that person is really trapped in illusion. I'm not thinking, or I'm not noticing, oh, that soul is beautifully radiant. So I'm judging their experience. The thought may be true, but that doesn't mean it's necessary. It doesn't mean it's adding to benefiting my experience. So really, it could go. It doesn't serve me. It may be true, it doesn't mean that it serves me. So, in order to accept that darkness, knowing it doesn't serve me is not sufficient. If I say, oh, that doesn't serve me, it's gotta go, and that's my first step, I'm actually skipping a step. I'm skipping the ownership of it. I'm rejecting it immediately. You see how tricky this is? That's what we call spiritual bypassing, is skipping the depth, and it's going straight to disowning. And that's where everybody gets so, I don't want to say everybody, but, spiritual stuff gets so confused. This is like one of the main reasons I've basically stopped attending spiritual events, is because people have these bullshit perspectives on that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, don't do this, disown that thought, disown that thought, disown that thought, and it's damaging. It's not holistic in its approach. It is prolonging the inevitable. It's rejecting power for later because it's inconvenient to deal with now. So the alternative. This is so fun. I'm having such a good time with you guys right now. Thanks for painting with me. I hope you like my... Apparently this is like a butterfly with multi-dimensional wings. So another way to deal with this. So I've had this thought, this person is so unevolved, this person is so stuck in their illusion. And can't quite see your, oh, good. Oh, cool, Kayla's painting with me too, awesome. So if I'm having this judgment, instead of trying, if you're trying anything, it's generally a recipe for avoidance. I actually had a thought in my mind today. I like making these short, little, profound Facebook posts. I'll just say it for now. Maybe I'll write it again later and you'll already have heard it. Avoidance is a carcinogen, right? Carcinogen is a thing that causes cancer. So avoidance is a carcinogen. If we are having a thought we don't like and we say, I shouldn't be having that thought, replace it, delete, replace it with this other one, that's avoidance. Unless you really know how to go into your subconscious and delete a thought, great. if you can actually do that on an energetic level and go to the root and clear the trauma in that moment, great. But most people are just saying delete, or most people are just wishing that was true. But if it's not actually true and you're not actually energetically going to the root and you're not actually deleting it, then pretending like you're actually deleting it is called illusion. It's self-sabotage. It's delaying the inevitable and pushing the deletion to later when you're fooling yourself into the idea that it's deleting now, because that's all it is an idea. Unless, like I said, you have the skill set of energetic deletion, which you may have. So, going into the actual thought, going into the actual, this is what I do, is I'm into role playing, right? I'm into experiencing the character who is hungry to live in the darkness, right? This is the character that causes our self-sabotage. So if you're experiencing the character who's hungry to live in the darkness, then that hunger isn't going to come out unconsciously in our everyday lives. I'll give you an example. I'm going to actually play the character. So you could call this intentionally going unconscious. You could call this facilitating my own unconscious experience. Damn, that person is so freaking in their illusion. They're going to hurt people. They're an idiot. They should be spanked until they wake up. They probably eat at McDonald's every day. They are abusive. They are emotionally manipulative. That person is such a scam artist. That person is untrustworthy. That person has no idea who they really are. That person is suffering. That person... See how, like, this character that is so judgmental of the darkness in my own nervous system is focusing on that person, that person, that person, and that's what we call blame. So I'm living in the energy of blame while I'm judging someone who is blaming. You see how that works? If someone is unconscious and they're living in their blame and they're complaining and it bugs me, I am living in my blame and I'm complaining about the exact issue. It's like a mindfuck. I'm complaining about someone who's complaining, or I'm blaming someone who is blaming. You see how silly it is? It's like the exact thing that drives us crazy is what we resort to as a method of dealing with it if we don't actually take a step back and breathe and feel the pain that it causes in our bodies and decide I'm going to pierce that pain instead of buy into the temptation of the voice that it encapsulates or that it represents. Reading your comment here. Hi, Melissa. Blame, blame, shame game. Yeah. I like that. So, yeah, the key word that I just touched on there that I really want to emphasize, especially for the upcoming storyfied quantum theater experience, unnatural temptation, is we have this temptation to experience the surface of a pain body, of a thought form, of a pocket of energetic shame, whatever you want to call it. It's got all these fancy names, but a wound. We have the temptation to experience the surface of it and kind of like skid on the surface. So it's like, oh, I'm feeling my wound, and then I like, people will surf along the top of it instead of going deeper into it. So when someone says, I'm feeling my pain, most people are not feeling it, they're surfing it. And that's a lot different. Feeling the pain is like being the inner parent and actually going into it and being like, oh yeah, that's fucking terrorizing. That is so scary. I'm in it, and I'm noticing how much that hurts, and I'm not believing it, but it is telling me to believe it for sure. That's a lot different than actually identifying with it. And I really want to be careful about how I say that, because identifying with it unconsciously is surfing it, but identifying with it consciously is going into it, and it appears to be surfing it. And I should probably break that down a little more just to be clear. I think I'm going to just hold off on the comments for now because painting. But feel free to comment, I'll just read them later. Okay, so I'm going to break that down a little bit once I get the green going here. This butterfly needs a head, you know what I mean? So, if we own a judgmental aspect of ourselves with presence as our adult selves, it gives us the freedom to be really nasty. It gives us the ability to move energy that we would normally consider unsafe to move. And when we have this permission, and that's a key word right now, permission. If we have this permission to create energetic movement that is normally frowned upon, then suddenly we are free to be disgusting. We're free to be ugly. We're free to be illegal. We're free to be taboo. We're free to be hated. We're free to be vile. If we allow ourselves to express the characters that would disgust us, it's scary to the ego, because at the end of the process, the characters that we are usually disgusted by are no longer going to disgust us. We're no longer going to have an energetic charge around them. And to the ego, that can seem very unsafe. Am I going to become naive? Am I going to become ignorant? Am I going to become... Am I going to be taken advantage of? Am I going to become unsafe? Right? I hear people say this all the time, like, well, I'm afraid to forgive because if I forgive, I'm going to be, what's that word, like, not liable, but vulnerable. I'm going to be vulnerable for it to happen again, right? But this is the huge misunderstanding about forgiveness, is people think they're going to become less mature from forgiveness, but that is the exact thing that matures people. You know, they say forgive but don't forget. Maybe you will forget, but you don't forget the energetic lesson. You become integrated into a new understanding of energetic boundaries. And when you do it to such a freaking degree that the energetic boundaries are truly embodied, you can completely forget them. And this is, I know this is not going to make sense for a lot of people, because it's, frankly, is a kind of a rare experience in humanity. You know, at this point, in 100 years, it'll be maybe in 40 years, maybe in 30 years, it'll be very common. But right now, it's a rare experience that people actually forgive so deeply that they can forget about the experience altogether, because their field, their energy field, starts to automatically drive away anybody who would not be able to survive, any thought forms, any egos that would not be able to survive that energy field are automatically repelled, because they know, if I go near that person, I'm not going to emerge the same. I'm not going to emerge intact. I'm not going to emerge without a transformation. So I posted recently a post that was confusing for several people. The post was something to the effect of, when I hear someone say, I don't resonate with that person, what I am hearing in the energetic subtext is, I am afraid of the power that person represents. And the reason for this is not to deny the power of boundaries. It's not to dismiss the necessity of boundaries. On the contrary, it is designed to give us an awareness of why we are expressing our boundaries, is because we are self-initiating when we have conscious boundaries. And so when we're fully initiated into our light body, into the soul inhabitation of our physical body, those boundaries become integrated into our field, where they become automatic, and the trying fades away. We no longer need to try to set boundaries. We no longer need to even be conscious of setting boundaries. We don't need to take up space at that point, and no fast forwarding. This is real work to get there. But we no longer need to think about it or set up space in our minds about setting up boundaries, because it eventually happens all automatically. And when it's happening automatically, that's how we know we can release the effort in setting those boundaries. Does that make sense? So it's like the spiritual bypassing part is, it should be all automatic. I decide to be a high vibration, poof, it's all done. It doesn't really work that way, because that's skipping steps, 1, 2, and 3. This is like, we must learn how to individuate by setting up really reasonable boundaries that give us the clear yeses and clear nos in our life. This is what most coaches teach, which is very essential. It's very helpful. And when it's really effective, when we've practiced it to the degree internally that it's so effective, we can actually release that teaching. And so don't fast forward to the part where you're releasing a teaching that's not integrated. One of the really interesting keys that I found here, I don't want blue, I have to change my color already. One of the interesting keys I found here, and this is fascinating, and I would love to study this at a scientific level, is if you're familiar with like parasites. I have, in my experience, found that when we're able to start setting boundaries really, really well, externally, those boundaries start to set in internally. And parasites are no longer able to live in our bodies because the only reason they can live is because of codependent thought forms living in our bodies. And so when we're able to set boundaries, which is the opposite of codependency, and create clarity within our energy body, it actually evacuates the parasites that live inside of us because they can no longer attach to the areas of codependency in our body. Isn't that magical? So with proper boundaries on the outside comes proper boundaries on the inside. I love that so much. That is just dope. So beautiful. So beautiful. And yeah, just to really define codependency, because that's been coming up a few times lately, people having different definitions of codependency than I have. In my view, essentially all of the planet is living in codependency. The patriarchy is founded on codependency. The mental illness that our planet is currently experiencing is a codependent mental illness. So, however we slice it and dice it, I don't find that some people are codependent and some aren't. It's that we are all expunging and dissolving the codependent cellular programming at the deepest level for the future and the current and the present time of our species. So calling some people codependent and some not is the same exact thing as calling some people good and some people bad, or calling some people smart and some people stupid, or just this compartmentalization. And it's not true. We all have some types of codependent behaviors, and we all have different ways of expressing these, either consciously or unconsciously. And really the point of this video is learning how to express our darkness, aka our codependency, in conscious ways so that we can see it, know it, learn it, own it. That rhymes. It could be a rap. See it, learn it. Wait, what did I say? I already forgot. See it, learn it, something, own it. See it, learn it. I forgot. At least I'm painting. Maybe that'll be my next painting so I won't forget it next time. See it, learn it, something, own it. I have to rewind this video now. And I'll just make a new one. Don't worry about it. If you have any questions, feel free to share. I can look at the comments. So I'll see what that says. Melissa, yes. codependent patterns and narcissistic patterns, always of dealing with trauma, imprints, etc. Yes. So, just refreshing, the topic is owning our darkness. Owning our darkness. What do you think of my butterfly with its multidimensional stuff? So, if this butterfly didn't own its darkness, it would still be in its cocoon phase, because the darkness is the energy required to complete the cocoon cycle, right? If we are if we're more afraid of going to hell than we are of expressing our deepest self-disgust, or of our deepest desires, or our deepest whatever, then that fear of what it might mean about ourselves becomes exactly what imprisons us. So, I don't see any questions. We'll see if I have anything else to say here. Today I'm off coffee right now. I've let go of coffee, but today I went to a coffee plantation with some friends, and there was a coffee taste testing experience. I've never done that before, so I went for it. You know, this is like, I have this super clear boundary. I am done with coffee. I'm not drinking coffee anymore. I am, I've noticed how it's drained my adrenals. It's made me dependent, addicted. It's not been good for me. And today was like the only time in my life I've ever heard of a coffee plantation taste testing. So there's a dual opportunity here. One is like a life experience. I get to do this thing. The other is, wow, this is an opportunity to cheat on my own rules and express my darkness. This is an opportunity to break my own boundaries just for the sake of reveling in the freedom, right? So if we do that unconsciously as the unconscious archetype of the rebel, it's self-abusive. But if we experience it, and this is really subtle, but it's very important, if we experience it as, I've created these structures, and it can be tempting to sculpt my self-identity, my personality around these structures. So as a consciousness exercise, I can break these structures knowing that tomorrow I'll go back to my rule of no coffee, because I'm not going to a coffee taste testing experience at a plantation again anytime in the near future. So it's very unlikely that I'm going to break the rule again. And so, similar with like veganism and, I've had this kind of fruitarian diet, and, just a lot of things, it can be very therapeutic to break our own boundaries. It can be very, therapeutic's not really the right word, but enlivening or flexibility creating or authenticity cultivating to break our own boundaries. And it can also be done out of addiction, and it can also be done out of making excuses like, oh, well, just this once, right? And look how fine that line is. See how subtle that is and how much mastery that takes to really own why. What is the reason for this decision? Where is it coming from? What is the actual motivation behind my actions? And if we're able to actually get really deep inside there, and for me today, I was like, I really don't want to drink coffee. Like, I am clear. I am not into coffee. I love coffee, but I am very clear I am done with it, and I'm going to do this taste testing thing. It was super simple for me because it gave me the confirmation within myself that I have no desire. And you know what? This is funny. I actually have a funny thing to add to this. The lady asked me, they grow their own coffee. It's a coffee plantation, and they also grow their own tobacco. The lady asked me, do you smoke? Do you want a cigarette too? I can roll you one. And I said, no thanks. Like, I definitely don't smoke. I think I've smoked half a cigarette in my life. I don't smoke. And I didn't say the whole thing. I said, no thanks. And I said, I don't smoke. I don't know what happened. Maybe something got lost in translation. She said, okay, I'll roll you one. And I was like, okay. So she rolled me one. And again, this is like, I crosses my mind like, okay, another opportunity to express my darkness. This is like the sort of, it really begs the question, is this actually harmless, or is this an excuse to start a snowball effect? Is this actually harmless, or is this a fictional lying to yourself just this once kind of experience? I certainly have no intention of smoking. Like, I cannot stress that enough. I am like not into smoking. She rolled a cigarette for me, and I fucking smoked it. I don't even know how to smoke a cigarette. She had to teach me how to do it. She's like, okay, you want me to light it for you? I was like, okay, here you go. She's like, no, you have to like hold it up to your mouth and like suck it while I light it. I'm like, okay, I didn't even know that because, thank you. So I like, okay, and then I've seen this in like movies, like, like you have to suck in a little bit. And I smoked a cigarette. I was really amused with myself. It was hilarious to me. And, frankly, I didn't actually I treated it like a cigar, like only in the mouth, and I didn't actually go all in on smoking it. I just wanted to taste it and stuff, but it was really funny, and it gave me such an experience of being like a rebellious teenager. I've never had that experience because as a teenager, I never got drunk. I never had a sip of alcohol. I never had a toke of a cigarette. So, just that playing with the darkness without identifying as it is so powerful for our systems, as long as we are deeply and honestly observing it as the sacred, embodied, responsible, loving adult presence. That makes sense? Coming at it with anything less than absolute vigilance is going to cause us to question ourselves, like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I'm glad I smoked that cigarette because I know I'm not going to make it a habit or something. I'm glad I smoked that cigarette because it gave me the real honoring of my ability to make up my mind about things. It gave me the deep acknowledgement of my own competence. Like, guess what? I'm competent enough to not smoke, and also I smoke one cigarette. I'm competent enough to take care of myself, and also I can have a splurge sometimes if I want to. I'm competent enough to live my life without second-guessing myself or making meaning out of decisions that have been conditioned to be marked as bad or evil or dangerous, whatever. Playing with the darkness is the best way to make more space for the light. And I acknowledge when I say the best, it's my best way. Maybe there's other ways. I'm sure there's other ways. That's great. For me, the brighter we shine with our light, the more deeply we must embrace, embody, acknowledge our darkness. Because if we are shining with a, imbalanced ratio of light to darkness, the light is going to throw us for a tailspin. Where does tailspin come from? Like a airplane. So if you imagine, airplane has two wings. If one wing is heavier than the other, the airplane is going to go woo, right? Tailspin. It's going to be like out of control. So the light and the darkness must be of equal weight, and that's how the plane is able to continue straight on. This is the reason Osho was known for his extravagancies, his Rolls Royces, his, sex with whoever. This is the unconscious reason. Michael Jackson had his infamous fetishes and his incredibly bright light in his music. If he had been able to consciously embody his darkness, he wouldn't have been so destructive with it. This is the reason, one of my favorites living today, Matt Kahn, listens to heavy metal when he works out. We all have ways and methods that our personality appreciates darkness. So there's no perfect prescription for everybody. But finding ways to acknowledge, honor, embody, experience our darkness while we're awake on purpose gives us so much more confidence. I don't really believe in confidence, but I'll just say I usually replace it with competence and safety with ourselves. If we're consciously embodying our darkness, we're not going to, this is really key, this is super important. I'm going to say it really slowly. If we're not embodying our darkness in some way, we are going to be afraid of it in our everyday lives. We're going to be afraid it's going to come out in our everyday lives. We're going to be afraid of ourselves embodying our darkness accidentally if we don't do it on purpose. I just got a great idea. Watch this. I'm stoked about this. You're going to love it. Check this out. Check this out. I'm dipping my paint in the black here. You see that? My butterfly. Die, butterfly, die. Fuck you, butterfly, fuck you. This butterfly is such bullshit. I hate this butterfly. This butterfly is such a piece of shit. I hate every butterfly that's ever lived. Fuck this butterfly. So stupid. This butterfly is such a freaking idiot. You don't know how to transform for shit. Get out of here. Boom. And then we continue to take it as extreme as possible. Fuck this thing. I cannot stand this butterfly. I hate this painting. This is the worst painting I've ever seen. Ah. So I don't necessarily believe this stuff, but it feels so good to just ruin something beautiful. And it gives my nervous system such a pleasure of like, I'm allowed to do that? Like, I can really do that? Is this really allowed? Are people going to get angry? Am I going to get in trouble? But look, I just made something beautiful. I think it was beautiful. Maybe you don't. And then I fucked it up. And I feel more alive because of it. And I bet you do too. That's a good place to end. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your presence. I love you. And I will soon be letting you know more about my upcoming quantum theater experience. It'll be the 30th here in Bali. I am probably going to either be live streaming or videoing it or both so that you can check it out if you're not in Bali. And thank you for everything.